this recipe just has stood out for some reason. There was something about it.
It is the most popular recipe in the history of Southern living, but no one knows where it came from.
Which is kind of crazy, but it did. It kind of took a life of its own.
It's 3 layers of moist.
1.5 cups of oil.
Sweet.
The riper the banana, the sweeter.
Perfection.
It's a cake for everyone.
It is.
It's topped with a healthy, or should I say unhealthy, amount of cream cheese frosting and southern pecans. So what is it?
There's something kind of mysterious and interesting about the name Hummingbird cake.
The hummingbird cake.
The hummingbird cake.
The hummingbird cake. Its origins have been a mystery to Southern living for 40 years since the original recipe was submitted by a reader.
Nobody knew anything about her.
I'm Meg Pace.
And I'm Nellah McGough. So we're talking about Mrs. L.H. Wiggins and the hummingbird cake. It turned out to be our most popular recipe ever.
Nellah and I teamed up to find the woman behind those initials, whose submission in 1978 had an impact on Southern Living magazine that no editor at the time could have imagined.
I suppose the idea of hummingbird, and there were bananas in that recipe, intrigued that editor, and she just happened to pull that recipe.
This is Biscuits and Jam. We find the stories behind every great Southern recipe. Over the next 5 episodes, we're taking a deep dive into how the hummingbird cake flittered its way to Southern living and the woman who sent it here.
She's like an icon around here, but we didn't know anything about her.
So let's start from the beginning. I'm Meg. You're Nellah.
I'm Nellah. Yep.
So you've been at Southern living how long? Remind me again.
10 years, almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years.
I'm the office manager.
So you know all the secrets.
Oh, yeah. Nah, there's not many secrets.
I'm a video producer for Southern Living. I work in the video studios at our Birmingham, Alabama office, making documentaries, shooting video interviews, and food how-tos. One of the most popular videos we have ever made was a how-to on the Southern Living hummingbird cake. So Southern Living first published the recipe 40 years ago?
Yep, February of 78.
So this is the 40th anniversary.
It is.
Even before I started working at Southern Living, I can remember all of the different hummingbird recipes that would come in the magazine. Can you kind of describe to me, I guess, the interest around this recipe? Why do we think people love it? It feels like it's kind of gotten a life of its own.
But I think it's just one of those flukes that, number one, it's good. And it's a great recipe. It's a great cake to take to church suppers or to funerals or whatever, you know, holidays, special occasions. It's just a really tasty cake.
Okay, so I realize that some of our listeners may have not had the chance yet to try a moist slice of the hummingbird cake. So Nellah and I stopped by the Southern Living Test Kitchen to have an expert weigh in.
And Pam Lawley was in our test kitchen so she would have been making them.
I'm Pam Lawley. I worked in the Southern Living Test Kitchen for 13 years and have been in the overall food studios for the past 2 years.
Pam tests, cooks, and creates recipes for Southern Living. She's one of the reasons we like to call this the South's most trusted kitchen. She knows her stuff, and after years of testing variations of this recipe, she knows the hummingbird cake. Tell me your first experience with the hummingbird cake recipe.
The first experience with the hummingbird cake, I actually made it before I worked here. And it was a favorite recipe of mine before I began working for Southern Living.
Was it the Southern Living recipe that you made?
It was, out of the magazine. I was a longtime subscriber.
How would you describe the hummingbird cake? What makes it different from other cakes or recipes?
You know, it's one of those cakes that is just so moist. And that's because of the oil. It uses oil rather than butter. And the undrained pineapple also adds to the moistness, and so does the mashed bananas. And just all of those flavors work so well together.
The hummingbird cake is 3 moist cake layers with cream cheese frosting in between the layers and spread across the top and sides of the cake. It's finished with chopped pecans pressed into the frosting around the side, and pecan halves decorate the top. Over the years, Pam has tested too many recipes to count, but this one, the Hummingbird cake, it's special.
Back in 1978, when they first tested it, there was a rating system then. You would give a recipe, 1 being a failure, 2 being a good solid recipe, 2+ being it was really good. But if a recipe got a 3, that was the highest rating it could get. And there were not very many 3s that would be given out during a year. And I think that the test kitchen, when they tried this cake and gave it a 3, they raved about it and then raved about it in the magazine. And when that happened, I think it just took off.
In fact, I was the one who instigated the rating system. If I had ever to do over again, I would have gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm Jean Wickstrom-Lyles. I was the senior foods editor at Southern Living. I joined the magazine in 1972. I retired in 1992.
Jean Wickstrom-Lyles is what I have always pictured when I thought of magazine editors. Glamorous, smart, and innovative. And she's a legend around here.
We still see your name. It comes across our desk, and you are revered.
Well, thank you.
I am Pat York. I'm an assistant food editor. I have been with the magazine since '06.
Nell and I brought Jean and Pat into our recording booth one day to give us the scoop on the recipes of life within the pages of Southern Living and how it scored the test kitchen's revered 3 rating.
I know not a lot of 3s were given out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right, because that was our highest. Once we established a rating system, that was the highest we gave. We enjoyed when we gave, the ultimate 3, and also knew then we wouldn't have to retest that because we did a lot of retesting of recipes.
Yeah. That's what they were celebrating.
Not retesting. Yeah, 3 always meant you can't make this any better, And most recipes would get 2s, 2+, and those that got a 3 was just, you can't get this any better.
Do you remember the recipe coming in when it was submitted?
I can't say I remember when it came in because we would get sometimes 1,000 recipes a month coming in because reader recipes, as far as I'm concerned, was really the magic of Southern Living back in those early years.
So how did you choose what recipes to test? Like, how would the Hummingbird cake recipe, come to the top of, okay, we need to test this?
Well, as we were planning our stories each month, we would select topics that we wanted to cover that month. And, of course, this one happened to be a story on bananas. And so the editor who worked on this particular story, she would go through the files, and I suppose the idea of Hummingbird, and there were bananas in that recipe, intrigued that editor, and she just happened to pull that recipe.
One funny thing about this whole thing is that it's not like we put the Hummingbird cake on the cover in that issue way back when.
Sid Evans, editor-in-chief of Southern Living.
It was just one little recipe in a story called Making the Best of Bananas with a bunch of other banana recipes. And that's the one that people freaked out over. It was on page 206.
Deep in the magazine.
It was buried in the way back in the back.
And it was black and white.
It was black and white with a black and white picture. So, there was a picture of the cake.
But it's not even a very big picture.
No. So, I think, that makes it all the more interesting.
How would you describe the legend around the Hummingbird cake?
I think the legend was born when it was published in 1978.
Pam Lawley again.
That came out, it got a 3, people started talking, people made it. It started showing up at parties and potlucks and church suppers, and it just kind of took a life of its own. And when Southern Living, at the time, they had somebody that would man the phones and answer readers' comments and would actually make copies of recipes for them. And I just think it grew from there. Just when it published in 78, it just kind of took on a life of its own.
People loved it, and they just requested it. I don't know how that happens, but it just does, because we have, thousands of awesome recipes in the magazine.
Yeah.
But this is just one that has stood out. And maybe it's because there was somewhat of a mystery about it too.
So who is this recipe's mystery submitter, Mrs. L.H. Wiggins?
We had actually looked into it a number of times. I mean, we've tried to track her down. We had put out calls on Facebook looking for Miss Wiggins. We had looked into our recipe files here, tried to find if she had ever submitted other recipes. And we just came up with nothing. So it really was kind of mysterious.
And then Nellah got on the case. Next time on Biscuits and Jam.
I went into our card file. We have recipe card files, back probably to 66. And the one recipe card that was not in there, I couldn't find, was this cake. Biscuits and Jam is produced by myself, Nellah McGough, with Meg Pace. Executive producers, Mike Grady and Sid Evans. Sound mixing by Jason Keener. Thanks to Sid, Southern Living's editor-in-chief, and executive editor Chrissy Tiglias for letting Meg and me take this story and run with it. Also, special thanks to Pam Lawley, Pat York, and Jane Wickstrom-Lyles.
And now, a little extra slice of Nellah. All right, so we're actually set up to record this time.
Okay.
I'll let you catch your breath. Since the elevators are down.
Whew. Okay. I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, good morning, Nellah.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm out of shape. I am really out of shape. I cannot walk up 2 flights of stairs.
No. Everybody's been complaining about those elevators being down.
Well, it's better to walk up flights of stairs than crash down to the bottom in a broken elevator.
True. Or maybe it's just Southern Living trying to make us stay to our New Year's resolution.
Well, that's evil. If that's the plan.